So it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I had the privilege to meet up with Matt a couple of months ago and heard about his journey, both as a football player, but also as a dad and a human being, and listening to how he has created a program that is really touching the youth in ways that we need conversations started around resilience. We need conversations started around you're good enough and keep going for what is best for you. And being able to structure conversations in a way that we're having them, not just like the fluff that's in the paper or there's, conversations on the news, but how are we infusing this reality into our youth in real time? And that was the component. There were many reasons when we talked. You just kind of know when you click with someone who gets it in the same way that you do. And being the Behavioral Health and Rape Crisis Center for the entire shore, we're serving 25% of the state of Maryland just right here. And so having Matt come down while he and I met at a cocktail party in Baltimore, the people that brought me to that cocktail party were trying to get a little bit more of what's happening across the bridge here on the Eastern Shore. And this is just a great way for us to bring Baltimore Ravens and the spirit of what represents our entire state through just an incredible human being who has done so much to change the lives of young people, which is really where it starts.
How I say my journey is your journey. That's my little pitch. Because it is. We've all been through our circumstances, and for me, it started as a young child trying to find my way and navigating my way. Luckily, sports was my avenue. I loved to have fun. I was very sociable, like a lot of kids, and I excelled over and over and over again. But with every bit of success comes very, very hard trials. And I had the structure around me without realizing it to have successful and impactful set of resilient circumstances. So football, athletics, you win, you lose heartbreakers. You win, you lose, and at the end of the day, you have these circumstances where sometimes you lose the big game, which I'll fast forward all the way to the NFL, and you're in the NFC or the AFC championship game, and you're the game before and you lose. How do you bounce back? What type of resiliency are you going to be experiencing, if at all? The light switch doesn't flip. And then I realized after losing an AFC championship that this journey for me, as far as getting over the hump faster, started back when I was 9 and 10 years old, 13 and 14 years old, with being able to be challenged mentally and being reinforced that, hey, listen, you're good enough. You can do this thing. Yeah. Like, yes, it's actually the hardest thing you've ever faced, actually. But with the right set of circumstances, we can help bridge that gap between where you are now and success. I love to help the next generation. So that's my thing. I thought that me making it to the NFL, was the passion, it was my purpose. It was not. It was being able to look back to the generation behind me and say, hey, I want you to be more successful than I am at a younger age, mentally, physically, emotionally. So why? Only because I want people to succeed. I want kids to know. There's a lot of kids who don't believe in themselves, and that's not right. And there's people who are telling them that they cannot do things. And I am a witness saying that yes, they can. And so we want to use our platform for a purpose. And that purpose is to make sure kids feel that they are putting their best foot forward. And at their lowest moment, we look at them like they're the brightest star.
Well, for children, it's really important that we are not only infusing mental health services and mental health conversation, but role models. And so, the hype of having a former Baltimore Raven come to town draws people's attention, but then you listen to Matt talk and you listen to the message that he has of you are good enough, and how do we help kids to know that they can make it and they can do it. And maybe there is someone in their life who isn't supporting or who has a negative attitude, but the whole piece that Matt and I talked about was seeing the sunshine through the clouds. That today is not it. There is tomorrow and there is hope. And when we can instill hope in young people, and when there's a role model saying, if nobody else believes, know that I believe in you. I was reading an article that Matt was quoted in, and it was all about in midst of having a lot of people who don't believe, if you need somebody to believe, look to me. And that's a message that how much we could change the trajectory of how trauma and mental health issues and heartache show up for our kids if we can get them thinking in a direction of, see the sun through the clouds. It's there.
And people will write you off. They will write you off. A circumstance can make you feel like you're written off. And so people may say, oh, the little Eastern Shore, there's no little in anybody. You know, big ideas come from all different lights and places and circumstances and neighborhoods. So I don't want the next president, the next lawyer comes from the Eastern Shore, right? The next star comes from the Eastern Shore. They just don't know it yet because they've been told that they're less than, or they've been told that they're to this or they're to that, or your family has been this for generations, so you can't be that. And those are all lies. And so if it takes a Baltimore Raven to come down and say, hey, listen, scratch all of that, right? My journey is your journey. I was you, right? I was you. I wasn't an NFL player at 10 years old. I was not, right? I was a scrawny kid that hung on to my mom. That's who I was, right? I was the baby and I'm just here to be with my mom and that's it. My dad, he's the disciplinarian, right? So, like most circumstances. So, but I don't want conflict and I just want to be under my mom because she cooks the amazing food, so whatever the reason, but you grow up and you see people on TV and you look up to them. And then when they come face to face to you, there's no little neighborhood, there's no little section of town. As urban or rural as Maryland can be, every kid deserves to be told that they can, and they will.
We can help kids practice resiliency. And so sometimes it's number one, just being aware that it exists and having a conversation about it. But then it's about teaching those skills. And okay, maybe you didn't get it right the first time. Maybe you gave up. Okay, but we're going to try again. And no different than we say to kids, you have to practice before you get in a game. You have to practice these skills in life before you have them down pat. And even in that, we're all going to get it wrong. We have to give ourselves permission to get it wrong and start again. And so being able to create things like, let's take a deep breath. Let's take a step back. Okay, what didn't go well? Let's see how we would do it differently this time if we were to do it again. Let's reach out to a teammate, to a teacher, to a parent and say, I'm unhappy, something didn't go right. Those are the things that if we can teach kids how to have conversations and create a pathway. I always say it's like putting tools in your toolbox and you have to carry that toolbox around with you. And some of it's also about like the pre-planning. So we have to think about what we're going to need in our toolbox before we go into a situation. And sometimes that is well planned out. And then sometimes you've got to rely on that quick tool that can just help you take a step back, take a deep breath, grab a drink, go take a walk outside for 5 minutes. There's so many things that our school system is really doing well to help our kids take breaks. Breaks, that's part of resiliency. When you know you need a break and you know that if you don't get that break, the path isn't going to look good, that's resiliency. Reaching out to a teacher and saying, I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm stuck, and having the courage to reach out to that teacher, that's resiliency. That's what we really want kids to build, and know that it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay not to do it right all the time. And we as adults have to model that. We have to model that mistakes are going to happen and we're going to be okay. We are going to be okay through that mistake. And when we think about the stigma, so 10 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation. This would not be a conversation. Matt would not be sitting here with us. He would not be visiting St. Michael's schools tomorrow. It just wouldn't have happened. So when we think about things like if children are saying, I'm depressed because I lost, what's important now is we can say to them, how do you feel? And we talk about feelings and we talk about those things that we are all experiencing symptoms of mental illness. It doesn't necessarily mean there's a diagnosis attached to it. What we have to help kids understand is that if that depression goes on for days and weeks, that's when we may need to seek help for someone who isn't able to see the sunshine through the clouds. But we're having different conversations. So the stigma, culturally, we have to be aware. We have to, Matt talks about it showing up in homes differently. It shows up everywhere differently. But if we can start to create a common language and help children understand what symptoms of mental health look like so that they can identify it and say, this is how I'm feeling, just that simple conversation of, I'm feeling really sad, and being able to sit in that space and talk it through with someone is a portion of how it looks different now than what it looked like 10 years ago.
Yep.
Well, then this is the one of many journeys that we will be on with Matt. This is not what I call like the say and spray program where he's going to appear once and disappear. We are working to put together programming where Matt will become a part of the Eastern Shore community and partnering with For All Seasons so that his message of resiliency can be spread throughout the community and be able to not just be within our Tolbert County Public Schools, but we serve all 5 counties. And so there will be sort of that school takeover and this message of Be the Storm that will be shared throughout the 5-county region. And then on the other side of it, you and I have talked, Dave, about our open access program and the mental health services and how we're growing our programs to meet the mental health needs of our kids and of the schools. And that's where the sort of merging of all of these programs comes to fruition, where we can be starting the conversation with our youth. It hits the adult community, the teachers are involved, the pastors are involved. We're really going to be able to have this conversation. So it's intrinsic throughout all conversations on the community front.
Everyone gets to a point where they want to quit. Period. I don't want to do this. This is too hard. I cannot do this. I'm giving it my best and it's not working. And I don't like this feeling. And I'm getting unnerved. I'm getting nervous. And I don't know what to do. Right? In that moment, I was 9 years old. I had been doing football for a week. I'm like, Dad, Mom, absolutely not. Now, what was that for me that made me feel like that? At the time, it was push-ups and sit-ups. I'm fine. I'm not doing that. Right? And my dad was like, yeah, you have to stick through it for this year. You can quit next year. I almost had a nervous breakdown. So, but my community knew me well enough to know that I could handle. And that's key here. So at 9, the tipping point. And then I was like, oh, I scored a touchdown. I love it, right? So they knew. So at 9, at 15, when I met my first strength and conditioning coach, and you're running now, and you're like, holy crap. In the NFL, when I got cut for the first time, in the NFL, when I got cut for the second time, in college, when they told me I wasn't good enough, right? So all these times, but when did I learn that skill? When I was 9, and I wanted to quit. And my community told me, you're better than that. And I was able to push through. So the next time and every other time that I was hit with these little bits of adversity, I said, my muscle memory said, and my mental memory said, I've been here before.